Hey, what's up, guys? It's Chris Wild here with you for another episode of Breaking the Fourth Wall podcast. Just to let you know, it seems like I'm going to be on my own, at least for the beginning part of the show. We haven't yet heard back from Brian Hayden, and Amadeus Thorne is stuck at work. So you guys got me for the moment, and hopefully we'll hear from Brian or maybe one of you guys here soon. Last week we did have a bout of illness, unfortunately, so we did not get the podcast out. That was my fault, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize for that. Uh, I just had, I don't know if I ate bad Chinese or what it was, but it wasn't pretty, and I was pretty sure you guys didn't want to hear the after effects on the phone, or on the podcast, rather. So, starting off, the big news Metallica dropped a brand new single for their upcoming album, Hardwired to Self Destruct. The single, obviously, is the title track, Hardwired. Uh, had a chance to listen to it. For those who haven't yet, Metallica is back. I'll give a quick review of it here. It is a very, very hard hitting song. Uh, Comparatively to Death Magnetic and basically the Bob Rock years, uh, Metallica had changed their format, gone a little bit more blues, a little bit more greasy rock than the thrash metal that a lot of the old school Metallica fans thrive on. Uh, Whether you call it selling out or just whatever you want to call it, getting too old to play fast. All you naysayers, I have a feeling that this album, if I just judge it off of this track, and I'm only judging it off of this track, I know they released another track before a couple years ago, Lords of Summer, which may or may not be on the album. I've heard it's not on the track list for the album. However, I have heard that there's going to be a deluxe edition to the album, which will give a additional disc, and it may or may not be listed on that third disc. So you can't really judge off of that one. And as far as they on YouTube, you can look up and find a preview trailer for the upcoming album. And supposedly there is a snippet of another song. I don't know off the top of my head what the song title would be, but supposedly there is another snippet of another track that will be on the album. The album is scheduled to release on November 18th. Uh, it's supposed to be a double disc, which this is what I find weird. Hardwired is a 3.5 minute song, which is pretty short for a Metallica track. Metallica normally not ever going below like 5 minutes for a song. 8 is the average. Doing a 3.5 minute track, but the double album, each disc only has 6 songs on it, but the runtime of the total album is supposed to be about 80 minutes. If Hardwire is the only thing I would judge off of, that makes no sense. But what it tells me is there are going to be a lot of very drawn out, dare I say, progressive metal style tracks on this album. Songs that are going to be very, very long, in length and duration. Um, I'm looking forward to it. To me, it's sounding like they're returning to the days of like And Justice for All, or maybe even Master of Puppets. Uh, Days where they were very intricate in their sound. They did a lot of changes. Uh, you could argue the point that Hardwired kind of has a very thrash meets punk type feel to it. That would be okay in an assessment, but I mean, lyrically, it wasn't. Excuse me. It wasn't as profound as I think James Hetfield has done previously in the past. However, I do feel that musically they went back to their roots. I mean, if I were to pick apart the song, and I've only listened to it a couple of times. And don't get me wrong, I like the song. I really like the song. But then again, I'm a Metallica fan. I was a fan of Load and Reload. I even liked Saint Anger, even though I hated that fucking snare drum. I loved Death Magnetic. I felt Death Magnetic was showing that they were going back into the direction that it seems like they are going. And obviously now with Hardwired, it seems that I was right in that assessment. Um, but if I were to pick the song apart, the couple of things. Now, again, the song is 3.5 minutes long. I have heard that it is very possible that this track that has been released on YouTube and given to the radio stations and stuff of that nature may not be the full track. There is the possibility that this is an edited down version simply to put out there to get people hyped for the album. And once the album comes out, Hardwired may wind up being a 7 minute long song. And that would be awesome because although I don't mind it being a short song, my biggest complaint and disappointment in the song was the guitar solo. Kirk Hammett, there's a signature sound to him with guitar solos, and one of my biggest complaints, besides the snare drum and Saint Anger, was that he did know guitar solos. And in this one, it was literally like a 10-15 second solo. It wasn't as intricate as something he would normally do. And that was my only real downer to the song. Otherwise, the song is very back to basics for Metallica, back to what they know how to do, and it quite honestly, it really makes me excited for the new album. Again, that comes out November 18th. In other news, Marvel Studios has casted, or not Marvel, excuse me, Sony Pictures has casted Mary Jane Watson in the upcoming Spider Man Homecoming movie. And here come all the complaints because guess what? It's a black girl from the Disney Channel playing Mary Jane Watson. Okay, I don't know her name. I don't have it sitting in front of me right now. And quite honestly, I'm a little too old to be watching the Disney Channel. So I wouldn't know who she is to begin with. I have seen pictures of her. She's a beautiful girl. I don't know how I feel about this. Now, if you listen back on previous podcasts, I complained about Marvel Comics uh, changing too many of their characters, turning them around from males to females, from whites to blacks or to Asians, and I don't really get what Marvel Studios is doing and why they're doing it. Um, Again, you can go back to the first episode of this podcast where, excuse me, Amadeus Thorne and I had this conversation where I had stated, and briefly here, I'll just say it over again. I had stated that if you want to have more diversity in your comic book heroes or side characters or something of that nature, that's fine. I'm all for that. You want to have a gay or transgender or lesbian hero? Awesome. You want to have a more racially diverse characters? Awesome. My only issue and my only complaint with doing that is stop messing with established properties. Don't make the Incredible Hulk Asian when Bruce Banner was never Asian. However, please, by all means, make an Asian superhero, but make him original, make him new. I don't see what is so absolutely difficult about that. If you want diversity, why not come up with new characters, new superheroes, new roles for these superheroes to play in your universe that you've created? That being said, I'm withholding comment about Mary Jane, mostly because she can't, just on acting skills alone, she can't be any worse than Kirsten Dunst. Let's be honest. The Spider-Man movies that Sam Raimi did with Tobey Maguire were great. They weren't phenomenal, but they were great. I mean, you can argue the third one, but one of the biggest letdowns in that trilogy was Kirsten Dunst's performance as Mary Jane Watson. She was nothing like the comic book character in any way, shape, or form. Okay, she had red hair and she was a white girl, and the girl wanted to be a Broadway star. That's about all she had in common with the comic book Mary Jane Watson. Her her acting was wooden, her delivery was terrible, and quite honestly, you could have put any female character in that role and gotten the same, if not better, performance than what she gave. I'm sorry, I don't hate Kirsten Dunst. I know some people do. It's just my view of it. That being said, I don't know any of the body of work of this girl that's supposed to take over the role now. I don't know anything about her. I don't watch the Disney Channel. I know that a lot of the Disney Channel's type of acting is very over the top, and it's intentional. So if I were to go and watch any of her previous stuff on that, of course I'm going to have a terrible outlook of her as an actress simply because if that's the only source material I have, that material is usually terrible to begin with. If there's any type of movie or anything, and if you guys know anything, please leave a comment down below. If you guys know anything about anything she's been in that wasn't like Disney Channel quality, that could really showcase her as an actress, I would love to check it out because I don't know anything about her. She may be phenomenal and the perfect fit for Mary Jane. My issue is not with her as an actress. My issue is with Marvel in general constantly changing their properties, constantly changing their franchises. Quite honestly, it's turning off a lot of your readership and a lot of your fan base. I'm not saying me, but I'm saying in general, it's turning off a lot of people. And again, I mean, you could do it in way if you have to do it with established characters, you could do it in ways that are make sense to the story, i.e., when Falcon took over Steve Rogers' role as Captain America because Steve Rogers died. That made sense. You didn't you didn't just replace Captain America. You to be more diverse, you created a story of why the original Captain America was no longer the Captain America. That makes sense. I'm fine with that. If you want to do that with your established characters, maybe they got too old, maybe they got killed, maybe I know this is DC, but maybe like Barbara Gordon from The Killing Joke, which just recently came out, which was a comic book a long time ago, but I'm talking about the movie, where she was shot in the spine and paralyzed and can no longer be Batgirl. I mean, there are ways you could do it that way, and it would do justice to your established property. But stop doing it for the sake of doing it. You know, but either way, that's my view of it. That's the big news right now with as far as Spider-Man: Homecoming is concerned. I myself, growing up being a Spider-Man fan, I absolutely adore the Spider-Man comics and movies and stuff of that nature. So I'm looking forward to Homecoming. The kid who played Spider-Man in Captain America: Civil War, again, his name is slipping my mind at the moment, but I absolutely loved his performance. The whole 30 seconds he was on screen. He stole the show, and it felt right. It was the first time we really got a Spider-Man who was a teenager trying to figure out how to be a superhero instead of, guys just coming out of high school, coming out of college, being out in the real world, and Spider-Man 5, 6 years into being a superhero. it's it's what it is. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping it doesn't bomb. But at the same time, if it does, there's obviously nothing I could do about it. Uh, but I'm going to support it. Moving on, let's see here. We were originally with this show, we were going to be talking about continuing on with our wrestling conversation. We were originally going to be discussing, we were supposed to do a top five list of our all time favorite wrestlers. Now, this was off of our last show, which we were discussing whether or not things are a sport or are not a sport, in the entertainment world of sports. Now, I'm not talking about like baseball, hockey, or football or basketball. I'm talking about off color things like the Call of Duty championships, like World of Series poker, how these are not really sports, they're more like hobbies and entertainment, but are being treated as a sport. And then we diversely wound up in a conversation of professional wrestling, which we all felt is truly a sport of athleticism, that because of the fact that it's choreographed, or, and I'm putting my fingers up in quotations here, fake, nobody ever gives it the respect due that the athletes put themselves through. Now, yes, I used to be a professional wrestler. I, for 18 years, beat the hell out of my body, set up and tore down rings, traveled throughout the country, held multiple titles, have been involved in numerous storylines, and I can tell you by every ache and pain I feel when I get out of bed in the morning, or the weather during the week, or something of that nature, I can tell you pro wrestling is not as fake as people think it is. You need to get that out your head. Okay? You don't have to like it. Okay? I don't like certain movies, but that doesn't turn me off from movies in general. So, or keep me from respecting the fact that that movie was even made. So, as far as I'm concerned, as far as pro wrestling is concerned, it's a sport. These guys, they train themselves to be in the best physical shape they could be. They work hours at a time per day in ring practicing their craft, doing the drills and the falls and everything else, to where it becomes a muscle memory. And for those that may be musicians, or those that may be listening in, that do any type of physical activity, you know what muscle memory is. That's where you have trained your body so well that you don't even have to think about what you're doing. Your body automatically responds to the situation it's in, because the body itself remembers that, okay, I'm in this, so it means I need to do this. You know what I mean? And to me, that's pretty much the definition of an athlete. You know, so anyway, as far as that is concerned, I feel that pro wrestling should be not classified as sports entertainment, or disrespected as it is as a sport, and really just go back to the moniker of being a sport. It may not be a contact sport. It may not be so much of a competitional sport, but you know what? Neither is women's gymnastics. But yet nobody says anything on that. So give it a break, guys. You don't have to like it to still respect it. I don't like MMA. I think the UFC is a bunch of bullshit. I think they're nothing more than a bunch of. It's a fight club, is really what it is. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just as predetermined, if not worse, than professional wrestling. And anybody who wants to argue that point with me, please come on, Aaron, let's talk about it. But this is my view. That being said, I don't take away from the training and the hours and the athleticism they've put in. And just because I don't like the sport does not mean that I won't give the sport its credit and its due. I think pro wrestling deserves the same amount of respect. Just my opinion. But we were today going to do a top five list of our top five favorite pro wrestlers growing up, especially because 3 out of 4 of us that were having this conversation are ex-professional wrestlers. So it kind of helped to put in perspective like who was our influences throughout the years. And I guess I could sit here and give you my top five. If you guys want, that'd be great. I could do that, but I'm thinking I would hold on to that until I actually have the panel here with me again, so that way they could give their list as well. Since it is only me today, at least until I can see if Brian or Thorne can get on, or even Joe JT, then I'm just gonna talk to talk. If they don't get on, I'm just gonna talk to talk. But if they can get on, then maybe we'll still do that top 10 list or top five list. Uh, let's see what else is going on in the world. A lot more hype around the Star Trek Discovery. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up on that. Star Trek is putting out a new TV show. The first one that has gone on since, I want to say, at least 10 years, when Star Trek Enterprise used to be on air. This one is the story of the Starship Discovery, and it's supposed to take place, if I'm understanding correctly, somewhere in a timeline between Star Trek Enterprise and the original trilogy or the original series. So essentially, and it's not Kelvin, it's going to be the original storyline or timeline. So this has nothing to do with like the J.J. Abrams reboots and the arc storyline of where things are completely different than what has been established in Star Trek lore. To me, I'm more of a Star Wars fan than a Star Trek fan. So as far as that's concerned, that does get me excited. I have no problem with the reboot movies. I really don't. In fact, one of my biggest things that I sit there and I wonder about is, will they ever get the what they call the Kelvin timeline to kind of curve back into established canon, original established canon, to make things like Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager still canon. I think there are ways they could do that, where they could actually arc it back to even make the original movies. You know, the motion picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and so on and so forth, all canon again, and have it kind of tie back in, because the reboot movies take place during the original series. Really, it's supposed to be during the 5 year mission of the original series. So if they keep it there and they find a way of tying it back in, that would be awesome. Because that's a lot. It's kind of like how Star Wars lost the extended universe. That's an awful lot of story you're just gonna throw away. Yes, it does free up for you guys to be able to be creative and do what you want to do with everything you want to do, and not be tied down to the original lore that was established. That's why when Disney had bought Star Wars and said everything that has ever come out is now the Legend series, it's no longer canon. We're gonna do brand new shit ourselves. I was probably one of the few Star Wars fans that was actually excited about that idea. I was sad to see the extended universe go, because I read the books. I've read the comic books, and stuff of that nature, and some of them had really great stories in them. I was looking forward to seeing the trilogy of the Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, and Dark Force Rising, and the like. And I was kind of disappointed to hear that they were no longer canon. They were no longer they never existed. Or if they did, they were in the Star Wars universe. They were considered lore instead of actual, fact canon. But at the same time, it made me that much more excited for The Force Awakens and for the upcoming Rogue One, because they are stories I don't know. They're stories that I haven't read before. And what I love is right now Disney is very much cherry picking out of the extended universe, i.e., look at Star Wars Rebels season 3 right now, where they have re-brought back Grand Admiral Thrawn into the Star Wars canon. Maybe not in the storyline and time frame that he originally was in the extended universe, but hey, the character himself is back, and it's going to be fresh and new. It's not going to be the story that you originally thought of with Thrawn, but you'll get new adventures with the character. And personally, I love that because I love Grand Admiral Thrawn. Timothy Zahn, the author who created Thrawn, created this well thought out, evil, genius tactician for the Empire. And what I've seen in the trailer for Rebel Season 3 is they really captured that essence. They kept what was Thrawn, Thrawn. They he studies aliens' arts and societies to understand their tactics and be able to create military strategies based on these things. These are things he did in the original expanded universe books. So I love the fact that they kept true to the character, even though they're giving the character a new story arc. That makes me thrilled. With Forrest Whitaker in Rogue One now being a canon character from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Saw Gerrera. I thought that was brilliant. You're tying back in the prequels and stories from the prequels. I don't care if you don't like the prequels. You don't have to like the prequels. I like the prequels. There are things about the prequels that I would change, or when I watch them, I purposely zone out and drool a minute so I forget they exist. Jar Jar Binks and midichlorians. But otherwise, I love the prequels. They are just as much a part of Star Wars to me as the original trilogy. I think the problem is too many people, too many old heads and people my age look at the original trilogy as the end all be all of Star Wars, and if it's not up to that standard, then it's not Star Wars. You know what? It's never going to be up to that standard. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 were such a phenomenal hit. Phenomenal hit, and a phenomenal amount of storytelling that you're never going to retouch it. You're never. It was lightning in that trilogy was lightning in a bottle. It really was lightning in the bottle. You're never going to touch it again. George Lucas himself can't touch it again. He created the damn thing and he can't redo it. Everybody gets that one masterpiece. That was his. But does that mean that the rest of the Star Wars stories suck? No. I'm not going to bash the prequels. I'm not going to bash The Force Awakens because they're not up to the standard of the original trilogy. It makes no sense. It narrows the story experience that I've grown to love because I love all things Star Wars. So, take that for what it is. Is the prequels as good as the original trilogy? No, of course it's not. Are there things about the prequels that I would love to see changed? Absolutely. Do I have complaints about The Force Awakens? Yeah. Are there some things I would love to change about The Force Awakens? Absolutely. Were they good movies? Absolutely, they were. They may not be the best like A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, but they were by no means bad movies, and the hate needs to stop. Which actually brings me on to another topic. I'm sitting here right now doing a podcast where I'm reviewing and critiquing movies, music, whatever the case may be. But in truthfulness and all honesty, breaking the fourth wall is really just us sitting here giving you our opinions of things we like or dislike. We give you our reasons why. But nothing we say is actually set in stone. You don't have to agree with us. In fact, I prefer if you don't, because it gives us more to communicate with if you don't agree with me than when you do agree with me. I would rather have a debate and hear your side of the story than have you yes manning me to death because, you know, my word is law. That this show is not law. This is not fact. I'll pass out facts to you, like, what day Metallica's album comes out, what who got casted in what role. Those are facts. But everything else that I talk to you about afterwards is simply opinion. It is the views and opinions of the people of the podcast, who speak them. But the fan bases anymore, particularly in the Star Wars fan base, I've noticed a lot. Y'all need to stop. Like, seriously, you blast the shit out of people for not holding the same views and values. Oh, Empire Strikes Back is the greatest movie ever made, followed by A New Hope and then Return of the Jedi. The prequels never existed, and The Force Awakens is nothing but a New Hope rehash. And anybody who doesn't agree with me, fuck you. You're just a fanboy sucking on J.J. Abrams' dick. You know what? That's uncalled for. You don't need to be acting like that. Okay, so some 13-year-old kid who grew up with Revenge of the Sith as their true Star Wars experience finds that to be their favorite Star Wars movie. Does that make them a little fanboy? No. They still found the excitement of Star Wars. Why you gotta hate on it? Why don't you welcome them into the fan base? Hey, we all like the same thing. We like different movies from it, but it's still the same universe. Why does it have to be a love hate fest? Same with Metallica. I've got a friend on Facebook who bugs me all the time, blasts me all the time because I'm a huge Metallica fan, been a Metallica fan my whole life. I'm not going to change that. He is a Megadeth fan. I love Megadeth. Dave Mustaine rocks. I'm more of a Metallica fan. My friend is a Megadeth fan, and he absolutely does not stop blasting it about how Metallica sold out and how they screwed Dave and how Megadeth is so much better than Metallica and only fanboys listen to Metallica. And I know he's fucking with me more than anything else, but I've seen this from a lot of different fan base people where it's like, seriously, it's metal. Even Dave Mustaine and the guys from Metallica have put aside their differences from all those years ago. Why is the fan base still battling out between the Metal Militia and the Rattleheads? I mean, seriously, stop. And just enjoy the fact that we still have those bands performing today. And they're both still, in their own respective ways, kicking ass. You like Megadeth more? Power to you. You like Metallica more? Power to you. Who cares? Music, movies, TV shows, comic books. When you break them down all to their essentials, they're all art. And art is, for the lack of a better term, art is beauty, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Just because my opinion differs from yours does not make that the thing that I view any less beautiful simply because you don't see it. Any more than what you view as beautiful any less beautiful because I don't see it. It's an opinion. It's like everybody has one. Doesn't mean we have to fucking start World War III in message boards and everything else over it. It's childish. It's stupid. I hate trolls. I hate them. You can hate my show. You can hate my opinions. But to sit there and troll me on my message board is childish. And I'm not saying this because anybody has, because nobody has as of yet trolled us on the message board yet or anything of that nature, for which I'm very grateful and I'm thankful for. But I mean, I see it on videos I'll watch on YouTube or even on Twitch. You know, I'll watch some of the video game competitions or something of that nature. And majority of the time, you see pretty positive statements from people, you know, towards whatever it is that, you know, that's involved. But then you always get that one asshole. And that asshole has to lead in and start tearing people apart. And pretty soon he's bringing all the other assholes into it too. And then what was supposed to be a good and positive and enjoyable experience for people turns into a shit fest of how much shit talking can we make. It's sad. I truly believe that the people who sit there and do this shit have no life and no self-esteem whatsoever, that they have to sit there behind a computer keyboard in their mother's basement next to their favorite picture of Britney Spears that they jerk off to every night and act like a keyboard cowboy. Oh, I am invincible in the internet. Nobody can touch me. Ha 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 ha. I will talk all the shit I want. You know, I come from the old school era where if you had a problem with somebody, you said it to their face, and if you got punched in the face for it, well, guess what? You deserved it. We didn't hide behind technology. And the sad part is all you fanboys and shit like that, and fangirls are. That doesn't make you a thug. That doesn't make you special. It makes you a bitch. In my world, in any world, it simply makes you a bitch. Now, I said this show is all about opinions, but in that statement, that's straight up fact. And I will tell you this now, as far as the podcast is concerned, as we grow, if we grow, we welcome differences of opinions. We want it. But I will tell you this, if we catch anybody trolling, there will be no warnings to it. You will be blocked. You will be removed. You will not be allowed to turn our program, which is for entertainment values and topics of discussion, into a name calling bitch fest. We're not going to do it. We're not going to allow it to have be done. Even though we are a parental advisory show, we still like to still kind of think of ourselves as family oriented. We want everybody to feel welcome when they come in, even if they're coming in with a difference of opinion. So, in other words, be yourselves, but be respectful. Now, again, I'm not speaking on anybody who listens to the show now because thus far we've received nothing but positive comments and responses, to which I'm extremely grateful for. Thank you very much. We glad you like us. I hope you'll continue to like us. I hope that this podcast will continue on for many, 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 many more episodes, and that we don't lose interest with it or run out of things to talk about, which I highly doubt because, you know, as long as Hollywood keeps popping out really shitty reboots, uh, we'll always have something we could sit around and discuss. But that's the only warning I'm going to give people who may want to talk trash. Changing gears here for a minute, going back, I mentioned really shitty reboots, and in the world of reboot news, Jason Momoa, uh, famed right now in the movie world for portraying Aquaman in the Justice League upcoming Justice League movie, as well as a little snippet of Aquaman in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, but also more famously known as Khal Drogo in the HBO series Game of Thrones, is reported to be petitioning to not only bring back the reboot of The Crow, the Brandon Lee classic from the 90s, but also to be the lead character in the movie. Understand, I'm a huge Crow fan. I even like the spin-off movies, even though they got progressively worse and worse after the original one. I don't mind if they make another Crow movie. I'm actually excited to know that there's, you know, even though it's been on and off, they've had a hard time keeping actors, they've had a hard time keeping directors. Uh, Quite honestly, I don't know if this movie's ever going to get off the ground or not. But I don't want a reboot of The Crow. If you want to make a sequel, great. You could always make another sequel. Nothing could be worse than The Crow Wicked Prayer with the kid from Terminator 2 playing The Crow. So, I mean, if you want to make a sequel of The Crow with starring Jason Momoa, I'm all for it. In fact, I'll wait with bated breath to see it. But Brandon Lee, The Crow was his final performance. He died filming that movie. That's his. Leave it alone. There's certain movies out there, and again, this is something we've had in previous podcasts before about some movies that just should not be remade. And some that were kind of mentioned were like Jaws and Star Wars. Don't ever reboot them. Don't ever reboot them. Leave them alone because they're perfect the way they are. I think that's the way The Crow is. Some people could argue that it's dated. Well, you know what? Of course it's dated. That's when the comic came out. That's when the movie came out. It was in the 90s. Of course, headbangers were uh, more around back then, and grunge rockers than there were hip hoppers and gangbangers or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter that it's dated. In fact, its dateness is probably part of its charm. But there are other films out there that I would absolutely love to see rebooted because it would fit. Surprisingly enough, Star Trek is something that I was fine with the reboot with, and I wasn't originally when I first heard about it. And in fairness, in all reboots, I usually go see the reboot movies because when I see the reboot movies, sometimes I get pleasantly surprised. With the Star Trek reboots, I did not go in expecting anything spectacular out of it. I really wasn't. Again, I may be more of a Star Wars fan than a Star Trek fan, but I respected Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and Dr. McCoy and the original crew, played by William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and so on and so forth. So when J.J. Abrams rebooted Star Trek, and then I found out it was supposed to take place over the original series timeline, I was against it. I was absolutely against it. And it wasn't against anybody who was playing the roles. But quite honestly, I didn't know any of them really, except for Scotty. I didn't really know who Chris Pine was. I didn't know who Zachary Quintos was, or the like. I'd seen John Shu, in something once or twice, and of course the late Chekhov. You know, I've seen him. I remember him from Terminator Salvation, playing the young John Connor, or not John Connor, Kyle Reese. So I had a general idea of some of the actors, but I didn't really know them that well. Well, when I saw the movie, I was blown away. And once I got over the initial, hey, this isn't like the original series, they're not staying true to the original story, and accepted the fact that this is an alternate timeline and an alternate universe, I wound up enjoying the movie. Into Darkness. There are things about Into Darkness I didn't like, but there were many things in Into Darkness I thought were done very well. Now, this is going to be sad to say when I'm an entertainment podcast here, but I have yet to see Star Trek Beyond. From what I understand of it, though, Star Trek Beyond is phenomenal. It is an extremely well done movie, and it makes me extremely excited to see. I unfortunately have a lot of personal issues in my life that has blocked me from being able to make it out there yet to see the movie. And sometimes when that happens, I like to use certain websites that will put up bootlegs or stuff of that nature, so I at least can still catch the movie. I prefer seeing it in the theater. I prefer the experience, but sometimes life gets in the way, and so I at least so I can report on it, try to catch them on these websites. And unfortunately, Star Trek Beyond has not made its way at least there yet for me to see. So I will give a personal review on it as late as it may be, as soon as I get an opportunity to be able to see the movie. Um, but I do that, and the point being for is that I felt I felt Star Trek should not be a franchise that was rebooted, and I was wrong because Star Trek's reboot actually did what it needed to do. Now, of course, there's still some fans out there that are like, "Oh, it's just a glorified action movie instead of the thinking man science fiction." I get your point. They took it a different direction, but they are bringing in brand new fan bases who were not really exposed to this franchise. Same way Force Awakens is bringing people back to Star Wars. The same way the prequels brought people to Star Wars for the first time. I think these movies are making people go back and look at the original trilogy, the original stories of Star Trek, and opening up the possibilities to the fan base. And some of the old school, I mean, it's new stories. Are you really going to complain that you're getting new stories in a franchise that is over 50 years old? But there are some reboots that you just think are going to be bad, and they're worse than you imagined. Ghostbusters. You know what? I went into Ghostbusters thinking to myself, this is something that, again, one of those movies didn't need a reboot. But they decided they were going to reboot it. Uh, then they decided to put an all female cast. Understand, I have no problem with the females. I have a problem with who they casted as the roles for the females. I don't care that the Ghostbusters themselves were females. But I still went and saw the movie. I wanted to be able to like this movie. I love the Ghostbusters 1 and 2. Loved them. Since I was a kid, I loved these movies. And I was hoping that at least this movie would capture that spirit of what the Ghostbusters was, even though they changed everything about it. I was hoping they would at least have the spirit of what was originally created. They didn't. I was hoping that there would be at least a feeling of nostalgia, knowing that a lot of the original casts were going to be making cameo appearances in the movie. I thought that might bring life to the movie. It didn't. Quite honestly, and take this to the bank. The new Ghostbusters movie was the biggest piece of shit movie I think I have ever seen, and that is extremely high praise coming from me because I've seen fucking Napoleon Dynamite, and when I was done with Napoleon Dynamite, I wanted that 2 hours and 2 hours of my life and 50 IQ points back that I lost in that piece of shit. And to me, Ghostbusters made Napoleon Dynamite look like an award-winning fucking comedy. Ghostbusters was fucking horrible. It was absolutely poorly acted. The storyline made no sense. You ruined the franchise. Quite honestly, let's call it what it is. You ruined the franchise. There's no way of saving this franchise. Now this franchise, who didn't need a reboot before the new Ghostbusters movie, to ever do another Ghostbusters movie, you have to fucking reboot it. You have to. You ruined it. Now it has to be rebooted, or else nobody's going to give a shit. Congratulations. Is Hollywood just out of ideas? Is it so hard to come out with new material? I mean, even the romantic comedies and everything that are coming out nowadays, they're all rehashes of themselves. There's nothing new under the sun. You can't tell me every story that could ever be told has been told. I don't mind sequels. Some people say all Hollywood is nowadays is reboots and sequels. I don't mind sequels. If you're continuing on with a franchise and you do it justly, I don't mind that you continue doing that. But as far as reboots, stop rebooting franchises, stop rebooting established properties, and just come up with something new and original. I'm a songwriter, or at least used to be. When I wrote songs, I didn't want my songs sounding the same. Yeah, I had to work a little harder if I was on some similar subject matter to something I had already written. I had to work and think a little harder to make sure that the storyline that I was trying to say in the new song didn't match something that I already did, but it was still original. Why can't these writers in Hollywood who make millions upon millions of dollars sit down and write new movies? You know what made Jaws so special? You know what made Star Wars so special as far as movies? You know, it wasn't just the special effects or anything else. It was the fact that it's never been fucking seen before. When they came out, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, nobody had written like that before. The Godfather, when it became a movie, it nobody had done a monster movie like that. Star Wars blew minds of everybody who likes science fiction because movies like that had never been done before in a fantasy type genre. What made them the classics they are today and what made them stand firm even today was the fact that they were so original when they came out. And I think, and again, this is just my opinion, but I do feel that there's a lot of people out there who would be on board with me. The fact of the matter is that nothing that's coming out now is really going to stand the test of time like these movies because they're not original. Where is, give me the sense of wonder when I go into the theater again. Give me the chance to escape reality and escape the stories I already know for a couple of hours. Hollywood, you're slacking. There's no better way to put it. You're slacking, and it's really sad because I think there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of talented people, undiscovered talented people out there who could probably give better and have given better, but we'll never know about it. Than what the Hollywood writers are doing. But like I said, we'll never know about it because they were never given the chance to make the big break for whatever reason. Now, I've always encouraged, as much as I like, big name, big money musical acts, go see your local acts, support local musicians because you will find great, great talent who is just undiscovered in the world at large, but that doesn't make them any less talented as a musician. I encourage going to see independent films and self financed films, small budget films, because you may find a diamond in the rough. You know, go to theaters, and I'm not just saying like Broadway. Go to. I remember in Colorado, I went and saw this production of a play. I got invited to go along, and at the time I was with somebody that I was trying to make good with their family, so I agreed to do this. And I went to go see a play called I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change. I'm not a theater going guy. I never was. I respect theater actors. I respect opera or, types of performances like that. I'm just not into them. I walked out of that theater seeing that play with tears in my eyes. I was laughing so hard. This play was great. If you could find it anywhere, maybe YouTube it. Maybe somebody had recorded it all those years ago. You're talking the early 2000s. So I don't know. I know YouTube wasn't really up and running yet, but that doesn't mean that somebody didn't, get a recording of it somewhere, or it got produced somewhere. But if you get an opportunity to see this play again, it's called "I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change." It will have you rolling. It really will. So again, it goes back to my point: is that you could find talent that isn't necessarily the big name stuff. The underground is full of talented people in different genres that who will give you their all and 120,000%. If you're tired of what the machine is constantly putting out on the radio and in the movie theaters and on the TV shows, go find go find it in your local areas. Go to a guitar center, or look up local performances online and find the entertainment that you're looking for, because I guarantee you it's out there. It may not have been discovered yet for the mainstream to take a hold of, but it's there. And on that, I think that's going to be good enough for this episode. Unfortunately, we never did get an opportunity to hear from Brian Hayden or Mike Thorne. Hopefully, they'll be joining me next week. So tune in next week, and we should be able to do our top 5 lists for you, and hopefully have some more news. Unfortunately, because I didn't have anybody to play off of, and I wasn't necessarily planning on doing this by myself tonight, I was a little unprepared. So I do apologize if this format felt a little sloppy compared to what we normally do. However, I hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share this when it goes up on YouTube. Make sure you check us out on www.wkkhtv. And definitely check out our sister programs in Top Rope Radio, as well as America's Pop Culture Magazine, also showing on WKKH TV. Until then, guys, enjoy. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Tick, 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 tock. Tick, 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 tock.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Chris Wild here with you for another episode of Breaking the Fourth Wall podcast. Just to let you know, it seems like I'm going to be on my own, at least for the beginning part of the show. We haven't yet heard back from Brian Hayden, and Amadeus Thorne is stuck at work. So you guys got me for the moment, and hopefully we'll hear from Brian or maybe one of you guys here soon. Last week we did have a bout of illness, unfortunately, so we did not get the podcast out. That was my fault, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize for that. Uh, I just had, I don't know if I ate bad Chinese or what it was, but it wasn't pretty, and I was pretty sure you guys didn't want to hear the after effects on the phone, or on the podcast, rather. So, starting off, the big news: Metallica dropped a brand new single for their upcoming album, Hardwired to Self Destruct. The single, obviously, is the title track, Hardwired. Uh, had a chance to listen to it. For those who haven't yet, Metallica is back. I'll give a quick review of it here. It is a very, very hard hitting song. Uh, Comparatively to Death Magnetic and basically the Bob Rock years, uh, Metallica had changed their format, gone a little bit more blues, a little bit more greasy rock than the thrash metal that a lot of the old school Metallica fans thrive on. whether you call it selling out or just whatever you want to call it, getting too old to play fast. All you naysayers, I have a feeling that this album, if I just judge it off of this track, and I'm only judging it off of this track, I know they released another track before a couple years ago, Lords of Summer, which may or may not be on the album. I've heard it's not on the track list for the album. However, I have heard that there's going to be a deluxe edition to the album, which will give a additional disc, and it may or may not be listed on that third disc. So you can't really judge.